listener production.
From the briefing team,
This is The Beefing.
Hey, it's Helen Smith here. Welcome to The Beefing. Today's beef is between 22-year-old activist Greta Thunberg and world leaders. Now, Greta is back in the headlines after she and around 170 activists from the Global Sumud Flotilla for Gaza were just deported by Israel after being detained in international waters. And this is what Greta had to say in Athens after her release from Israeli detention.
Under international law, states have a legal obligation to act to prevent and to stop a genocide from happening.
You'll learn that Greta is a pro at making fiery, impactful speeches. But with that said, let's get into the beef between Greta Thunberg and world leaders. Greta Thunberg is a pro at feuding with world leaders. In fact, she's beefed with US President Donald Trump, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, ex-US President Joe Biden, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, former President of Brazil Jair Bolsonaro, and even former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. A pretty impressive list for a 22-year-old, and that's not even all of them. So the Swedish activist first made international headlines for her viral speech at the United Nations Climate Action Summit back in 2019.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
The speech helped turn her into a household name, getting a reaction from former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who at the time said she was fueling needless anxiety around climate for children, and French President Emmanuel Macron, who said her stance was very radical and likely to agonise societies, which I'm guessing was exactly the point. Now, she's even had Twitter feuds with Trump, but we'll get into those a little bit later, don't you worry. But who is Greta, and why does she make so many people, in particular world leaders, so angry? Well, she first learnt about climate change when she was just 8 years old in 2011, and as a result fell into a deep depressive state over why so little was being done to address it. And because of this, when she was just 11, she actually stopped talking and eating properly, later saying in a TED Talk that she was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, OCD, and selective mutism, which she now says actually helps her focus on climate action. And in 2018, when Greta was just 15 years old, she staged a protest outside of Swedish Parliament for 3 weeks, demanding change to Sweden's climate policies, which garnered international attention and eventually led to a global movement, Fridays for Future, where students would skip school across the world and protest for climate. And she didn't stop there. The year after, 2019, so the same year she made her iconic How Dare You speech, she was responsible for helping organise one of the biggest climate demonstrations in history, where 4 million people across 150 countries protested against climate change. Pretty impressive for a then 16-year-old. And to top it off, she was also named Time Magazine's Person of the Year, making her the youngest recipient ever. And you might think, wow, all she's doing is protesting to save the planet. How could any of this piss people off? Well, it does when millions, if not billions of dollars are on the line. And one millionaire and world leader she's quite easily been able to get under the skin of is Donald Trump, who mocked her How Dare You speech, replying to a snippet of her speech saying she seems like a very happy young girl looking forward to a bright and wonderful future. So nice to see. And Greta actually used his insults of calling her sarcastically happy as her Twitter, now X, bio, putting a very happy young girl looking forward to a bright and wonderful future on her profile. And then when she became Time's Person of the Year, Trump tweeted, "So ridiculous. Greta must work on her anger management problem, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. Chill, Greta, chill." Which again, gave Greta some more inspo for her Twitter bio, changing it to a teenager working on her anger management problem, currently chilling and watching a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. And in 2020, her feud with Trump continued when Greta replied to Trump's tweet, "Stop the count," with, So ridiculous. Donald Trump must work on his anger management problem, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. Chill, Donald, chill. Which is pretty iconic from the then 20-year-old. And in 2021, Greta made another viral speech at the Youth for Climate Summit in Milan, criticising world leaders over their promises to address the climate crisis.
Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah. Net zero, blah, blah, blah. Climate neutral, blah, blah, blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders. Words that sound great, but so far has led to no action.
Seems to me like Greta is just really good at making iconic speeches. But like most activists, her climate action has actually gotten her in trouble with the law multiple times. She's been charged with disobeying police orders, arrested for failing to comply with a lawful order to disperse, and even forcibly removed by law enforcement from blocking a road. But her activism hasn't all just been about climate. She's condemned Russia over their invasion of Ukraine, which led to her having a sit-down with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other prominent European figures, a chat that most world leaders can't even secure. And she's also taken a stand against Israel for their war on Gaza, joining flotillas sailing to Gaza in an attempt to bring aid into the region and break the Israeli blockade a few times, which brings us to now, where she was just part of the Global Sumud Flotilla heading to Gaza that was reportedly hit by multiple Israeli drones, with her name once again leading international headlines. It's pretty wild how much power Greta holds and how she's able to get the attention of world leaders over issues like climate change, making headlines across the globe. It's almost like she's doing exactly what she set out to do. But that's it for today's beefing on Greta Thunberg versus world leaders. If you liked this episode, we'd love it if you could share it with someone else who you think might enjoy it as well. It's a really easy way you can support everything we do here at The Briefing. And if you've got a beef you want us to dive into, you can send us a DM on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. Until then, I'm Helen Smith, and I'll catch you next time.